President Donald Trump in Scotland now making tons of news at an impromptu press conference. I love how he does this. You know, every other president would go overseas, they would stick to the script, it would be incredibly stilted. Trump just like free form. Like, what do you want to know? Well, let's talk about anything, literally anything. Epstein, great. Putin, done. Me and other leaders, great, I'll do it. Tariffs, yes, that's what we're here for. We've never had a president like this. They're all so afraid. They don't want to say anything off script. They don't have the confidence. Trump not only has a lifelong confidence that lets him do this, but he's truly in the 0 F's to give category. And you can thank the Democrats for that. That's one lovely thing we've gotten from the Democrats who have tried to imprison our current president, and the loons who God only knows exactly the party affiliation, but who tried to kill Trump and threaten his life. They too have left him in this 0 F's to give place. And that's why he's better and stronger than ever. And that's the man you see on the world stage now and negotiating incredible tariff deals, et cetera, which we're going to get to in a minute. A huge win on the tariffs front. This is not media spin. It's a huge win. And all of his detractors are being proven wrong every day. Just think of when the tariffs first started to get unveiled and how many people were so quick to jump on him, even on the right. He's wrong. These are a disaster. He shouldn't do it. Very few defended them or said, as we did, can we just wait and give him the benefit of the doubt? And let's see how he does. Well, he's doing great. They're paying dividends quite literally. Joining me now to discuss all of it is Victor Davis Hanson. He's the host of the Victor Davis Hanson Show and author of the book, The End of Everything. VDH, welcome back. Great to see you.
Thank you for having me, Megyn.
The tariff deal is huge. Let me just, do we have the sampling of predictions on the tariffs, you guys? Do we have that soundbite? Yeah, watch. This is what the media said was going to happen on the Trump tariffs.
You can't undo the damage. The Trump slump is upon us now.
We're in a car driven by somebody who was blackout drunk. And it's like one of those bad Bugs Bunny cartoons. It's Looney Tunes.
This is not Liberation Day in America. It's Recession Day.
The greatest man-made economic crisis in modern presidential history, and paralyze American businesses, large and small, forcing them to lay off people, to stop hiring or pause investment decisions.
It feels like there's an expression in tech called chaos monkey. Well, this particular chaos monkey is throwing feces all over the planet, essentially, and saying, enjoy. So I don't.
Kara Swisher, who knows nothing. So you saw top Dems, top media pundits saying it's doom and gloom. It's economic catastrophe coming our way. You could expand that. There was the shelves are going to be empty. We're not going to have goods anymore. He's going to devastate American farmers, up and down the board, you name it. Now he's struck deals all over Asia. We have a deal with Japan, Vietnam, the UK, and now beyond the UK to Europe, which is 27 countries. The deal with Japan and the UK looks almost exactly the same. We get to charge them 15% tariffs. They charge us zero. And the UK, the European Union kept trying to bargain us down. Maybe it could just be a 5% tariff? No, 15. Maybe it could be a 10% tariff? No, 15. Okay, if it's going to be a 15% tariff, maybe we'll tariff you guys too, some portion. No, you'll charge us zero. That's what they agreed to, in addition to opening U.S. access. Sorry, let me read my note here. Investments in the American market by the Europeans, so he's getting them to invest their money here, and opening their markets to American companies in the way they hadn't been before. Trump was out there saying, let's face it, you guys weren't really open to us. You were kind of taking advantage of all the buying power of American consumers, and you really weren't letting us and our companies sell our goods there. It was one-sided. Our so-called friends who we got such a hard time for not being nice to, were taking advantage of us, Victor. And now Trump's done it. He's taking in tariff income. He's getting them to invest in the country, and our companies get to sell their goods over there. I mean, it's a complete win so far.
It is. If I could just detour a bit, Megyn, for 5 years I farmed full time, and I did it part-time here on my farm for 15 years. And I grew raisins, and the EU subsidized and dumped their raisins with a 500 subsidy dollar a ton. And it destroyed the raisin market in the 1980s. And my point is that when Reagan officials, whom I had liked, came out to explain, you know what they said to us? This is good for you, because this was the traditional economic exegesis that if they subsidize and we don't, then we're going to have kind of a Darwinian, only the strongest will survive, and that's good. And you'd say, well, you can't survive when they have a $500 dumping advantage. And then they'd say, well, they won't be able to sustain it. And they did sustain it. And then they'll say, it's going to lower prices for Americans that if you get less, and it didn't. And so we've been dealing with this economic orthodoxy for a long time, and what's missing is we don't really know what the profit margin was for the Japanese, the Chinese, the Europeans in this market. It could have been 20 or 30, but my point is that they apparently have calculated that as long as it's 15%, they're going to make plenty of money without having to raise prices and get in a trade war as the entry charge to get into this huge consumer market. And everybody said that's not true, but apparently they have made a calculated decision that they will make plenty of money, pay the tariff, and be here. The other thing we don't realize is the total market capitalization of Silicon Valley is about $9 trillion. Doug Burgum the other day said there's $15 trillion in foreign investment on schedule to be invested in the United States in the next 2 years. The economists have, they have certain formulas that for every $1 billion of foreign investment, you get, 5,000 new jobs. But nobody in their right mind had ever envisioned 15 trillion if that actually happened. So what I'm getting at is there's all sorts of new things that have happened under Trump. The Interior Department, our EPA, not having 2 years to wait for a permit, but 21 days, or getting rid of 1 million through self-deportation illegal aliens that I can tell you from living here at ground zero of illegal immigration, many of them, or if not most, were on federal, state, local entitlements. So there's all sorts of things that nobody has calculated the actual effects of. They just go back to this old stale orthodoxy, doom and gloom, and then when it doesn't happen, they neither apologize nor they explain why they were so pessimistic. All those clips that you had, they never said, this is why we're going to have a recession. This is going to be this. They never do. They just parrot each other. And it's very disappointing. Even the Wall Street Journal, not the op-ed, but the news section, I went back and looked at it, what they were saying in March. Stock market collapse, stagflation, job decrease, decreased real wages. It wasn't that they were wrong, that the opposite happened at every one of those categories.
Right, exactly. We've got a surging stock market, record highs on the stock market. The inflation is down to 2.4%. I mean, very low under Trump. The interest rates would go down and the inflation would stop even more if he could get the Fed to cooperate with him. But there's a writer, Colby Hall, over at Mediaite, who wrote an article to his credit, calling out some of the naysayers. Paul Krugman called it the biggest trade shock in history, he said, was coming our way. They warned about economic Armageddon. He calls out Bill Ackman, who warned of a self-induced economic nuclear winter coming our way, likening the policy to a second Great Depression. We played Chuck Schumer in that montage, declaring the tariffs could destroy New York City's economy, drive the United States into recession, and on it goes. Elon didn't like them either, calling the plan super stupid. We could keep going. So, I really hope people will take a pause here and actually tip the hat to Donald Trump so far, because these folks are agreeing to pay 15% tariffs without raising prices. You mentioned it in passing, but they're not going to raise the prices. They're going to absorb that money, which is going to get paid to us, to the United States. There was a report over the weekend that we're now making so much money on the tariffs that Trump's considering a rebate to the American people, which frankly shouldn't happen. It should go to paying down the enormous debt. But the point is, when have we ever been discussing a rebate to the American people, or had a month like June where we were finally in the black when it comes to our balance sheet for the first time in forever? We were not in the red. We took in more than we spent.
Yeah, I mean, Scott Besson, who's very conservative in his prognoses, has said that we might get $1/3 trillion in tariffs. That's unheard of. But he said it. And, when you look at, everybody's angry at Trump for berating Powell, but we pay $3 billion a day in interest. All Trump is trying to say is if you use the same calculus that you did during the Biden administration, when, after all, before the election, they lowered interest rates, if you just cut it by 1/3, we would save another $1/3 trillion. That's, that's about $700 billion in interest savings and tariffs, and we're 1/3 of the way to balancing the budget. So there's things that are in process that I don't think any of our journalists or politicians, even if they were disinterested, and most of them aren't, they're prejudiced and biased because Trump just sets them afire. But if they were disinterested, I don't think they've seen anything like this level of foreign investment or this deregulation or the streamlining of the federal government or the sudden closure of the border or nothing's happened like this before. There was 1 million jobs that foreign nationals held that are no longer there, but there's 2 million new jobs for Americans. And
right.
All we heard from these people was you can't do anything unless you have comprehensive immigration reform. And that wasn't true. All you needed was a new president. It was very simple.
Right, to the point where his border policies have been so effective. Rahm Emanuel, who's clearly running for president over on the Dem side, told me last week there's nothing he would change about them. Not a thing about the border policies that Trump has instituted. That's incredible. He doesn't like the deportation policies, no Democrats going to, but the border policies. So it's really incredible. Here is the president of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, to Trump earlier, Sat 2.
You're known as a tough negotiator and deal maker. What is in front and fair. And what is in front of us?
That's less important.
If we are successful, I think it would be the biggest deal each of us has ever struck. So I'm very much looking forward.
Ever struck by anybody? That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. You and I both figured this is really the biggest trading partnership in the world, so we should give it a shot, right?
Yeah. Very much looking forward to that.
Oh, thank you very much. I do too.
He set the deadline of August 1st, and some countries are finally realizing he means it. And so here we are almost there. And the European Union, which is, 27 countries, Victor, this is huge. They, let's be honest, they bent the knee. They did what he said they needed to do, which was take the 15% and not complain about it, same as Japan. And by the way, all the deals he's striking over in Asia are really important because they're basically an end around China. They open up those markets to the United States. Japan was letting, you can't go to a street corner in American cities without passing a Toyota dealership, but we couldn't sell our cars over there because they put so many regulations. It wasn't a tariff thing, but there's so many regulations on our cars that they weren't sellable. Trump's changing all of that. There's just no trading partner, friend or foe, that he looks at differently. Doesn't matter who you are. He wants to make a deal that will benefit the United States and leverage our incredible buying power. Everyone wants access to the 330 million Americans that are here, but just no president before actually used our strength to improve our negotiations.
Yeah, I think also there's two subtexts. They understand that under Trump, this economy in the next 4 years is going to be it's going to be the freest economy, the least regulated of any of its competitors, and it's going to grow, and they want in on that growth. The other thing is they know what they've been doing. The reason that they're making agreements is they look back at the last 20 years under globalization and so-called free trade. That was not fair, and they know they made out like bandits, and so they feel that some of this is repertory. And the other thing is, they also understand that for all the talk about the 5% at NATO or Japan's rearming, that for the recent history and for the present and for the near future, the United States really does subsidize their defense and has allowed their economies to be mercantile because they Japan and the EU were spending well under 2% of their defense budget the last 20 years, and we were subsidizing, and they know that. And Trump brings all that stuff up to them, and they realize they had a pretty good deal, and they can have a good deal, maybe not a great deal like they've had, but a good deal. And the alternative was not very palatable to them.
Mm-hmm. So now you get the New York Times reacting to the news with the following headline. Trump and the EU have a blueprint for a giant trade deal. Is it good for Europe? Who gives a shit if it's good for Europe? That's a headline for France, for Germany. That is not a headline for the New York Times, Victor.
I know it. It's almost every time he has something that works, everybody, I was just to show you an example, I was talking to a very well-known general not too long ago. And right before all of the Trump reforms and ads, the end of DEI at the Pentagon, changing the direction of the emphasis at the Pentagon into battlefield efficiency, efficacy, and not DEI. I was telling him all this. He said, no, the reason that we're 55,000 recruits short is because of obesity. It's because of drugs. It's because of gangs. We're competing every other reason but the obvious one. And I said, I think it's going to work. And it did. It was almost magic, like he did with the border. Suddenly there is no military recruitment shortfall. We were told that this was systemic and we'd have to live with it with a smaller military. And when it turns out, Megyn, all it was is, I looked at the data, it was white, male, rural, young people who felt unwelcome, whether it was because of the vaccination ban or ban when they didn't want to get a vaccination because they had natural immunity, or it was the DEI ads, or it was a sense they wouldn't be promoted or treated fairly, or it was Mark Milley and Austin's testimony about systemic racism everywhere, which was never proved. But that cohort started to join again. And they were the people who died statistically at twice their numbers in the demographic in Afghanistan and Iraq. That's just another example of this traditional status quo wisdom that's, you can't do this, it won't work. And yet when it works spectacularly, they don't even have the intellectual integrity to say, we were wrong. It actually was a solution.
That's exactly right. Since Trump was sworn in, his administration has made enormous progress at a breakneck pace. But while they're moving mountains for the good of the nation, they cannot fix your personal savings. You're going to be the one who has to do that. One of the best ways to look after your savings is through diversification, particularly with gold. From Birch Gold Group, in the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. That's amazing. Central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by buying in record quantities. Birch Gold makes owning physical gold extremely easy. Convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or buy some to store in your home safe. Just text MK to the number 989898, and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of your savings today. Text the letters MK to 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.